Confederacy had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across hundreds of worlds. Their fleets numbered in the millions. In all that time, no species had ever stood against them and survived. They were the masters of the galaxy, and they knew it. When their long-range sensors detected a new spacefaring civilization on a small blue planet called Earth, they did what they always did. They sent a subgation fleet, 40 warships, each 1 kilometer long, armed with weapons that could turn mountains into dust. It was more than enough. It was always more than enough. Amanda Lear stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the blue planet grow larger on her screen. She was tall for her species, with deep blue scales and 6 eyes arranged in a crescent across her face. She had conquered 17 worlds in her career. This would be her 18th. What do we know about these humans? She asked her communications officer. Young and eager, he pulled up the data on his console. They are a primitive species, Commander. They have only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. Their largest ships are perhaps 500 meters long. They have colonized only a handful of worlds in their own system. They made a sound of amusement. Children playing with toys send the standard message. Then transmitted the signal that had brought countless species to their knees. The message was simple: surrender your world. Resistance is death. Join the Confederacy or be destroyed. Fleet slowed to stop at the edge of the human solar system and waited for the response they always received. Fear, panic, desperate attempts at negotiation. It was always the same. The response that came was not what they expected. Sung Ho received the alien transmission on the bridge of Earth's orbital defense station. He was 53 years old, with gray hair at his temples and lines on his face that spoke of too many battles and too many losses. He had fought in 3 colonial wars. He had buried 2 sons in the cold void between the stars. He had seen things that would break most men. Read the alien message twice. Then he set it aside and picked up his coffee. It had gone cold, but he drank it anyway. His aide, a young woman named Officer, looked at him with worry in her eyes. What do we do? Not answer immediately. He walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 40 alien warships were waiting to enslave his people. Every human being who had ever lived or would ever live. Had known this day would come. They all had. Since the first human had looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone, they had known. The universe was vast and old and full of things that did not care if humanity lived or died. Humanity had prepared. Take your base, said quietly. Offers agent code Omega 7. Tell them to wake the eternal dawn. Face went pale. Everyone knew about the eternal dawn. It was a legend, a rumor, a ghost story that parents told their children to help them sleep at night. The monster under the bed that was actually on humanity's side. Or is that real? To look at her, there was no fear in his eyes, only a cold, hard certainty. It's real. And today the universe is going to learn why humanity never gave up. Why we kept fighting, kept building, kept reaching for the stars even when everything seemed hopeless. Look back at the window. Today they learn what fear really means. Beneath the frozen surface of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, something ancient began to wake. The facility had been built in secret over the course of 100 years. Thousands of workers had lived and died there, never telling anyone what they had created. It was humanity's great secret, their final answer to a hostile universe. It flickered on across a hull that stretched 15 kilometers from bow to stern. That was not a mistake. 15 kilometers. A ship so large that it had its own gravity. A ship that could carry a small city inside its belly. Cores that had slumbered for decades roared back to life. Power flowed through systems designed by the greatest engineers in human history. Weapon batteries that had never been fired began their start sequences. As above the shipyard began to crack and groan. Massive doors, hidden beneath centuries of frozen water, slowly ground open. Demon vapor rose into the thin atmosphere as something impossibly huge began to rise. Fleet the heck of the enter surge immediately. Hands trembled as he read his instruments. Commander, we are detecting a massive power signature from one of the gas giant moons. You frowned. How massive? I do not understand these readings, Commander. The energy output is greater than our entire fleet combined. It must be a malfunction. But it was not a malfunction. Watch your screen as the readings continued to climb. Higher and higher. The numbers stopped making sense. No single source could produce that much power. No ship could contain that much energy. Anna said, his voice barely a whisper. Something is rising from the moon's surface. Tactical display flickered. The sensors, designed to track thousands of ships across light years of space, struggled to process what they were seeing. A shape was emerging from the ice of Europa, a shape that grew larger and larger until it filled the entire screen. What is that? Lear demanded. No one answered. No one could answer, because no one had ever seen anything like it. At its orbital station, Admiral watched the same readings with grim satisfaction. Around him, officers cheered and embraced. Some wept. The legend was real. The ghost story was rising from its grave. Said, her voice shaking with emotion. They want to know if we have a response for the alien fleet. Slowly, tell them we received their message. Tell them we understand their terms. He paused and allowed himself a small, cold smile. And tell them that humanity declined. Back to the window, where a distant point of light was growing brighter near Jupiter, the eternal dawn was awake, and the universe would never be the same. Help them, said quietly. Because we certainly won't. Park had waited her entire life for them on. She stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn and felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet as the great ship rose through Europa's shattered ice fields. Around her, 12,000 crew members worked at their stations with the focus and skill of people who knew exactly what was at stake. 38 years old. Her face was sharp and angular, with eyes that had seen too much death to fear it anymore. She had joined the military at 18, right after the first colonial war had taken her father. She had risen through the ranks not because she was lucky, but because she was very, very good at her job. And her job was war. Stations report ready, Captain, said Lieutenant Han, her executive officer. Han was younger than by about 10 years, but she had the same hard look in her eyes, the same understanding that the universe was not a kind place. And Dennis asked, 12 main reactors online, backup systems standing by, we have full power. Weapons, 18,000 batteries active and tracking, main cannon on standby, point defense grid running at maximum efficiency. She looked at the main, which showed the dark sky of Europa giving way to the star-filled void of space. Jupiter hung in the distance like a great orange eye, watching everything. Gus out, she said, let them see what they are doing with. Eternal dawn rose through the last of Europa's thin atmosphere and emerged into open space. The ship's running lights blazed to life along its entire 15-kilometer length. These lights were not for navigation. There was no need for navigation lights in the emptiness of space. These lights were for one purpose only. Be seen? Ship moved forward, accelerating toward the inner solar system where the fleet waited. Every line of its design spoke of purpose. Every angle was meant to intimidate. The bow of the ship was shaped like a blade, sharp and aggressive. The hull was covered in weapons, thousands of turrets and mill tubes and energy projectors, all pointing outward like the spines of some great beast. It was not a ship built for exploration or trade. This was a ship built to kill, and it was very, very good at its job. The flagship Commander Lyra watched the approaching vessel with growing disbelief. Her tactical display was struggling to keep up with the sensor data. The human ship was still accelerating, and now that it was in open space, her instruments could finally get accurate reading. But they told her it was impossible. 15 kilometers, said, his voice hollow. The human ship is 15 kilometers long. Did not respond. She could not respond. Her mind was trying to process what she was seeing, and it was failing. No species built ship that size. The resources alone would require stripping entire planets bare. The engineering challenges were beyond anything the Confederacy had ever attempted. Power output continued. It is still climbing. Commander, their main reactor appears to be some kind of contained singularity, a black hole. They are using a black hole as a power source. It's impossible, one of the other officers said. That technology is theoretical at best. No one has ever achieved stable singularity containment. Humans have, replied quietly. Finally found her voice. It is still one ship. We have 40. Send the attack order. All veils forward. Target their engines and weapon systems. Concentrate fire on their projection. Commander said hesitantly, perhaps we should wait. Request reinforcements. This is not what we expected. Do not retreat from a single ship, Lear said firmly. No matter its size, the Confederacy does not retreat. Send the attack order now. Fleet surged forward, their ships spreading out into attack formation. Blue plasma began to build in their forward cannon, the same weapons that had burned cities and shattered continents on 17 different worlds. Watched them come. Her face showed no emotion. She had studied the alien vessels carefully during their approach. She knew their weapons. She knew their speed. She knew their shield technology. She knew they had no chance. Their attacking hand roared. 40 vessels inbound, webs charting. See that? Replied. She turned to her weapons officer, Commander 1. He was a heavyset man with calm hands and calmer eyes. He had served on the Eternal Dawn since its construction, and he knew every weapon system on the ship like he knew his own heartbeat. Commander, what do you think? I think they have made a very bad decision, Captain. Gree sat down in her command chair, opened a channel to the alien fleet. Nod and activated the communications array. A moment later, his face appeared on every screen in the fleet. She did not smile. She did not show anger. Her expression was calm and cold, like the surface of a frozen lake. This is Captain Park of the United Earth vessel Eternal Dawn. You have entered our solar system with hostile intent. You have threatened our world and our people. I am giving you one chance to reconsider. Paused, letting her words sink in. Your ship's around. Leave the system. Return to your Confederacy and tell them what you have seen here today. Tell them that Earth is not a target. Tell them that humanity is not prey. The flagship Lyra listened to the human's words with growing anger. How dare this creature lecture her? She had conquered worlds. She had crushed rebellions. She would not be intimidated by one ship, no matter how large. Your response, Commander, asked. You the attack, Lyra said. Show them what the Confederacy does to those who resist. The fleet opened fire. Tons of plasma bolts streaked across the void toward the Eternal Dawn. Each bolt carried enough energy to level a small city. Together, they formed a wall of blue fire that would have overwhelmed any normal ship's defenses. The bolts struck the Eternal Dawn shield. Nothing happened. The ship did not shake. It did not slow down. The shields absorbed the attack without any visible effect, like an ocean swallowing raindrops. The plasma fire simply vanished into the golden glow of the shield barrier. The bridge hand-checked her console. Shield integrity at 99.8%, Captain. Minimal energy drain. Not slowly. Now they know. Commander, you may return fire. Defensive batteries only. Let us see how they handle our smallest weapon. Fingers moved across his console. Yes, Captain. Firing defensive batteries. On the hull of the Eternal Dawn, thousands of small turrets rotated toward the fleet. These were the point defense systems, designed to shoot down missiles and incoming fires. They were the weakest weapons on the ship. They opened fire. Beams of white light lanced across the void. Each beam was perfectly aimed, guided by targeting computers that could track a grain of sand from 1,000 kilometers away. The beam struck the ships and cut through their shields like they were not there. The ship died in the first 3 seconds. They did not explode dramatically. They simply came apart, sliced into pieces by weapons designed to destroy things much smaller and faster. The flagship Lyra watched her tactical display fill with death. 1/3 of her fleet was gone in the time it took to blink, and the human ship had not even used its main weapons yet. The first time in her long career, High Commander Lyra felt something she had never felt before. The bridge of the flagship had become a place of chaos and terror. Officers screamed at their consoles. Warning alarms filled the air with their harsh noise. On the tactical display, ship after ship was marked as destroyed, their lights blinking out like dying stars. Lyra gripped the arms of her command chair so hard that her claws left marks in the metal. She had never experienced anything like this. In all her years of conquest, she had never faced a weapon she could not understand, a ship she could not defeat. And her shouted over the noise. We have lost 18 ships. The human vessel is not even damaged. Our weapons are having no effect. News should order a retreat. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to run, to save what remained of her fleet. But she was a high commander of the Confederacy. She had never retreated from anything. She did not know how. Ships concentrate fire on their shield generators, she ordered. Find a weak point. There must be a weak point. Main 20 ships changed their tactics. Instead of spreading their fire across the human vessel, they focused everything they had on a single point. Plasma bolts and particle beams and missiles all struck the same small section of the Eternal Dawn shield. Golden barrier flickered slightly under the concentrated assault. Are having an effect, reported, a note of hope in his voice. Their shields are weakening in that sector. The Eternal Dawn Lieutenant had noticed the change immediately. Captain, they are concentrating fire on our port shield array. Shield strengthened that sector, dropping to 92%. Raised an eyebrow. It was the first sign of emotion she had shown since the battle began. Interesting, they learned quickly. We rotate the shields, spread the damage across different arrays. Lean back in her chair. Let them have their small victory. Let them think they have found a weakness. She turned to Commander. Continue with defensive batteries only, but increase the rate of fire. Yes, Captain? When defense turrets began firing faster, the streams of white light became almost continuous, sweeping across the fleet like the hand of an angry god. More ships died. Some tried to maneuver away, but the targeting computers tracked them effortlessly. Others tried to retreat, but they were too slow. In less than a minute, only 12 ships remained. Watched her fleet die and felt something break inside her. She had been so confident, so sure of her superiority. The Confederacy had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had never met a species they could not conquer. These humans were different. These humans had built something that should not exist, something that everything Lear knew of physics and engineering and warfare. This was not a ship. This was a force of nature given form. And said quietly, his voice had changed. The fear was still there, but now there was something else. Understanding. I think I know why their ship is so powerful. What do you mean? I've been studying their planet, their history, pulled up data on his console. They are a young species, Commander, only 200,000 years since they became what they are. But their history is full of war, constant, endless war. They have been fighting each other since the very beginning. Looked at her with all 6 eyes. We fight to conquer, to expand, to grow our empire. But they fight to survive every generation, every century. They never stop preparing for the next war because for them, the next war is always coming. Stared at the data. The human history was indeed filled with conflict. Thousands of wars, millions of battles. They had created weapons that could destroy their entire planet, and they had used them on each other. They had fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over things so small and petty that Lear could not even understand them. Each time they had built something bigger, something more powerful, something more terrifying. Dawn was not just a warship. It was the result of 200,000 years of evolution toward violence. It was humanity's final answer to every enemy that had ever threatened them. The retreat signal, Lear said finally. Her voice was hollow, empty. All ships fall back to the system edge. We are leaving. Looked at her in shock. Commander, the Confederacy has never retreated. If we return in defeat, the Council will. The Council will understand when they see my report, Lear interrupted. We came here to conquer a primitive species. We found something else entirely. She gestured at the tactical display, where the Eternal Dawn hung like a predator watching wounded prey. We found the species that will one day conquer us. The flying ship began to turn away. Their engines flared as they prepared to flee. Then Captain's voice came through the communication channel again. Cold, final. Told you there would be no second warning. His blood ran cold. What does she mean? We are retreating. Commander said, his voice trembling. The human ship, their main cannon is charting. The Eternal Dawn, deep in the heart of the ship, Engineer Beijing monitored the main cannon's power systems. She was young, only 26, but she was one of the most brilliant engineers humanity had ever produced. She had helped design the weapon that was now preparing to fire. The cannon of the Eternal Dawn was not like any other weapon in the galaxy. It did not fire plasma or particles or missiles. It fired gravity itself. The kind of singularity at the ship's core was not just a power source. It was ammunition. The cannon would create a focused beam of gravitational force so intense that it would crush anything it touched into a point smaller than an atom. Singularity stable, Jin reported. Power flow at optimum levels. Main cannon ready to fire on your command, Captain. The bridge stood up from her chair. She walked to the main and looked at the fleeing alien ships, 12 vessels each carrying hundreds of crew members, beings with families, with hopes, with fear. It was about to kill many of them. She knew this. She had made peace with it long ago. Hen said softly, they are retreating. We have won. We do not need to destroy them. Yes, we do, replied. Her voice was not angry or cruel. It was sad. If we let them all go, they will return with a large fleet, and the fleet after that will be larger still. The only way to ensure peace is to make them understand that attacking Earth is not just difficult, it is unthinkable. Turned to face her crew. We are not cruel people. We do not enjoy killing, but we have learned something in our long and bloody history. Mercy without strength is weakness, and weakness invites attack. Look back at the screen. We will destroy their flagship. The others will survive to carry our message home, and that message will spread across the galaxy until every species knows the truth. What true, Captain? Hen asked. Eyes were hard as stone. That humanity does not bluff. That when we make a threat, we mean it, and that the cost of threatening our children is higher than anyone can afford to pay. Turn to Commander. Target their flagship. Main cannon. Fire when ready. Out at once. Yes, Captain. Firing main cannon. The beam that emerged from the Eternal Dawn's main cannon was not like any weapon fire they had ever seen. It was not a stream of light or a bolt of energy. It was something far worse. It was a line of darkness, a wound in space itself, a place where light went to die. Gravitational beam crossed the void in less than a heartbeat. It struck Commander Lear's flagship in the exact center of the hull, and then physics stopped making sense. Ship did not explode. There was no fire, no flash of light, no debris flying outward. Instead, the ship began to collapse inward. The metal of the hull crumpled like paper being squeezed in a fist. The entire vessel, 1 kilometer of advanced alien technology, folded in on itself. Manfred turned to escape pod moments before the impact. He watched through the tiny viewport as his commander's ship was crushed into a point no larger than a marl. 1,500 crew members, including Commander Lear herself, were compressed into the tiny space in an instant. They did not have time to scream. They did not have time to pray. They simply ceased to exist as anything recognizable. Then he and that marble-sized point vanished, swallowed by the artificial gravity well that it created. The 11 ships did not wait to see what would happen next. They ran. Their engine burned so hot that warning lights filled every bridge. They pushed their ship past all safety limits, desperate to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the human vessel. The Eternal Dawn Captain watched them go. Her face showed nothing, but inside she felt the weight of what she had just done. 1,500 lives ended in a moment. Families that would never see their loved ones again. Children who would grow up without parents. They had not wanted this. None of them had wanted this. But humanity had learned long ago that wanting peace was not enough. You had to be strong enough to enforce it. Running, Hen reported quietly. All surviving vessels are at maximum speed toward the system edge. Let them go, said. They have learned their lesson. Bridge was silent. No one celebrated. No one cheered. They had won, but victory felt hollow. Necessary, but hollow. Said after a long moment. The main cannon has powered down safely. All systems nominal. Good. Begin damage assessment. I want a full report on our status within the hour. Captain, we did not sustain any damage. No, turned away from them. But I want the report anyway. And good work today, all of you. You performed exactly as trained. Walked toward her ready room, a small private office attached to the bridge. Hand followed her. Captain, are you all right? At the door, she did not turn around. I just killed 1,500 people, Lieutenant. Beings who were only following orders. Beings who had families and dreams and fears. She paused. No, I am not all right. I will never be all right with what we have to do. But being all right is not my job. My job is to protect humanity. And today I did my job. entered her ready room, and the door closed behind her. Away at the edge of the solar system, the 11 surviving ships regrouped. They were damaged, some barely able to maintain life support. Their crews were in shock. Many had lost friends and colleagues on the ships that had been destroyed. In command of the surviving fleet by default, he was the highest ranking officer left alive. He stood on the bridge of a ship that was not his own and looked at the faces of his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Of course, for Confederacy space, he said. His voice was steadier than he felt. Maximum sustainable speed. We need to report what happened here. Will you tell them? The ship's original captain asked. He was an older male named, and his eyes were haunted by what he had seen. About the question for a long time. What could he say? How could he explain the impossible thing they had witnessed? Tell them the truth, he finally said. We found a species unlike any other. A species that has been at war with itself since the beginning of their history. A species that has turned violence into an art form. And when we threatened them, they showed us what they had built to protect themselves. Look out the viewport at the distant sun of the human solar system. From here, it was just another star among billions. Tell them that Earth is not a target. Earth is a warning, and any fleet that goes there will meet the same fate we did. On Earth, Admiral received word of the battle's outcome. He was in his office on the orbit station, a small room with a single window that looked out at the blue planet below. 40 enemy ships neutralized, his aide reported. 29 destroyed, 11 retreated. No human casualties. The Eternal Dawn did not sustain any damage. Slowly, he had expected nothing less. The Eternal Dawn had been designed to fight enemies far more powerful than a simple subjugation fleet. It had been built for the worst scenario that humanity had always known might come. What about Captain? He asked. He's requesting permission to return the Eternal Dawn to its dock at Europa. She wants to restock ammunition and perform maintenance. Stood up and walked to the window. Below him, Earth turned slowly, its ocean blue and its continents green and brown. 7 billion people lived down there. 7 billion human beings who would never know how close they had come to slavery or extinction. Did not need to know. That was the job of people like him, to stand in the dark so that others could live in the light. Said hesitantly, what do we do now? The aliens will return eventually, with a large fleet with more powerful weapons. Yes, they will, agreed. And we will be ready. The Eternal Dawn is not our only ship. It is simply the first. There are 3 more under construction, each one larger and more powerful than the last. They did him 3 more. How is that possible? The resources alone would require. Thing finished? They required everything. Every major nation on Earth has been contributing to the project for the last century. Every mine, every factory, every scientist and engineer. It was the most ambitious undertaking in human history. Turned to face her, because we knew this day would come. We knew that someday something would find us, something that wanted to take what we had built, and we decided as a species that we would not let that happen. Look back at Earth. We are not a peaceful species. Our history is written in blood, but that same violence that nearly destroyed us 100 times over, it also made us strong. Strong enough to survive. Strong enough to fight back. Strong enough to make the universe itself think twice before threatening our children. The aliens asked, what happens when word spreads about what we did here? Out himself a small smile. That is exactly what we want. Let word spread. Let every species in the galaxy know what happened to the fleet that threatened Earth. Let them understand that humanity is not prey. Months had passed since the Battle of Earth, as humans had begun to call it. The story had spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every spacefaring species had heard some version of what happened. A subjugating fleet, 40 warships strong, had been destroyed by a single human vessel. A ship so large that it believed. A weapon so powerful that it could crush matter itself into nothing. Confederacy had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. In all that time, they had never apologized to anyone for anything. They had never asked for peace. They had never sent diplomats to a species they had tried to conquer. Until now, the mag vessel that entered Earth's solar system was small and unarmed. It broadcast peace signals continuously, making absolutely certain that no one could mistake it for a threat. On board were 3 ambassadors, chosen by the Confederacy's ruling council to make first contact with humanity on friendly terms. The ambassador was an elderly female named Mora. She had served the Confederacy for over 200 years. She had negotiated treaties with dozens of species. She had never been afraid of anyone or anything. She was afraid now. Ron met the delegation at Earth's orbital station. He had dressed in his formal uniform for the occasion, a simple gray jacket with his rank insignia on the collar. He looked exactly like what he was, a tired old soldier who had seen too much death. Or walked with difficulty in the human state and gravity. Her species was not built for such heavy worlds, but she refused the assistance that was offered to her. She wanted to show strength, even if she did not feel it. Well, she said, her translator device converting her words to human speech. On behalf of the Confederacy, I offer our deepest apologies for the actions of our fleet. We came to your world with hostile intent. We threatened your people. We were wrong. Her face for a long moment. He could see the fear behind her formal words. He could see how much it had cost the proud Confederacy to send these ambassadors. Her apologies accepted, he had simply. Please sit down, we have much to discuss. Moved to a conference room overlooking Earth. Through the large windows, the blue planet turned slowly, peaceful, and beautiful. Mark could not stop looking at it. Such a small world, such a fragile-looking place, and yet it had produced the most terrifying weapon she had ever seen. I've studied your species, Moore said quietly. Your history, your wars, your technology. We have tried to understand how a species so young could build something like the ship that destroyed our fleet. And what did you learn? Asked. Was silent for a moment, then she said something that surprised even herself. We learned that we do not understand you at all. You are unlike any species we have ever encountered. You are violent beyond reason. You have weapons that could destroy your own world, and you have used them against each other. And yet you are also capable of great kindness, great art, great beauty. Shook her head slowly. You are a contradiction, a puzzle, and that is what makes you so dangerous. He had heard similar things from human philosophers for centuries. It was not new to him. What our history made us, he said. We learned very early that the universe does not care about us. It does not protect us. If we want to survive, we must protect ourselves, and we must be strong enough to make our protection meaningful. Ship, Moore said, the one you call the Eternal Dawn, is it your only one? At himself a small smile. No, we have 3 others larger. Or 6 eyes widened. For a moment she could not speak. 3 more ships like the one that had destroyed 40 warships without effort. 3 more impossible weapons. Why, she finally asked, why would you need such power? Who are you preparing to fight? One replied, "No one. We do not know what is out there in the darkness between the stars. We do not know what other species might look at Earth and see easy prey, so we prepare for the worst. We always prepare for the worst." Leaned forward in his chair. "Let me tell you something about humanity, Ambassador. We are not conquerors. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want to destroy other species or take their worlds. All we want is to be left alone to live our lives in peace." Voice hardened. "But we have learned that peace must be defended, that those who cannot protect themselves will be exploited by those who can. So we built our ships, we developed our weapons, we made ourselves strong enough that no one would dare to threaten us." "And if someone does threaten you," Moore asked. "And we teach them why that was a mistake," said quietly, "just as we taught your fleet." Negotiations that followed lasted several days. In the end, the Confederacy offered humanity a full alliance, trade agreements, technology exchange, mutual defense pacts. They offered everything they had once tried to take by force. Humanity accepted, not because they needed the Confederacy's help, but because it was the right thing to do. Because despite everything, humans still believed in second chances, still believed that former enemies could become friends. The final day of negotiations, Moore asked to see the Eternal Dawn in person. It was an unusual request, but granted it. He accompanied her to Europa himself, where the great ship rested in its hidden dock beneath the ice. Stood on an observation platform and looked up at the vessel that had destroyed her fleet. It stretched into the distance, too large to see all at once. Its hull was dark and angular, covered in weapons and sensors and systems she could not identify. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she had ever seen. "How long have your people been preparing for war?" she asked. "The beginning," replied. "Since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. We were never waiting for friends in the darkness, Ambassador. We were waiting for wolves." Looked at the ship with something like pride in his eyes. "We simply made sure that when the wolves came, they would learn to be afraid." Away on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain stood at the observation window. She watched the tiny figures of and the alien ambassador far below. She knew what they were discussing. She knew what Moore was feeling. And Hen approached with 2 cups of synthetic coffee. She handed one to her cat. "You think it will work?" Hen asked. "The alliance, I mean. Do you think they will really become our friends?" Coffee? It was bitter the way she liked it. She thought about the question for a long time before answering. "Are afraid of us now," she said. "And fear can become respect. Respect can become trust. Trust can become friendship." She paused. "It will take time, generations maybe, but yes, I think it will work. And the other species out there, the ones who will hear about us, will learn the same lesson they learned. Look out at the stars. Countless points of light, each one potentially hiding another threat. They will learn that humanity does not break, we do not surrender, and we never ever abandon what we love." Raised her coffee in a silent toast to the darkness between the stars, to the unknown dangers that waited there, to the future that humanity would build, one way or another. "Let them come," she said softly. "We will be ready." Eternal Dawn hung in the void, patient and eternal, a monument to human stubbornness, a warning to the universe, a promise that whatever came for humanity would find them ready. Somewhere in the endless night of space, the story continued to spread. The legend of the day aliens came to conquer a small blue world and discovered that some prey was too dangerous to hunt. The day they met humanity's greatest creation and learned the true meaning of fear. Wolves had come for humanity, and humanity had become something the wolves could never have imagined. Something worse than wolves. Something that wolves feared. Smile fade, because if they do not learn that lesson, we will have to teach it to them again, and again, and again, until they finally understand. The Eternal Dawn spoke with the voice of a god. "Fear